What's up everyone? Welcome back to Angle Grinders and Ideas. Today we're working on a 125cc Chinese pit bike. Check it out.
Just want to give you guys a rundown of this thing before I start working on it. I don't know what year it is. I know it runs. It's got working front brakes. Back brakes don't work at all. It's got a lever, it's got a rotor, it's got a caliper, but I think the master cylinder has actually failed. It is a 125cc 4-stroke. It's got a Pitster Pro frame for those of you that are familiar with like the Chinese pit bikes. Back in the day, Pitster Pro was kind of like one of the pioneers with this stuff. And it's got a Pitster Pro muffler. So I'm assuming it's a Pitster Pro header exhaust frame. And it's got the fast Ace front forks, which I know came on some of the Pitster production bikes. So with that being said, I don't know if the whole bike is Pitster. I think it's like a compilation of Chinese parts. The motor is, it's got the OGM ignition cover on it. So it looks like one of the older 125s that the Chinese companies were producing, and you know, they sell them. They make them in one factory and put like various different covers on them for different manufacturers. But it's got the KLX 110 style plastics, and the bars are real. I know they got a lot of fake pro tapers. It's got a billet fuel cap, and it could use some tires. And it does actually run and ride, and it shifts fine. All the gears work. There's no grinding or spinning of the shift drum, but it doesn't run very well. So I need to pull the carb off and clean the bowl. It's gonna need new tires soon, and I need to get a rear brake master for it. But I wanted to grab a new bike so my girlfriend can learn how to ride. It's a 4-speed with a manual clutch, and I don't think she's ever even ridden a dirt bike. You ever ridden a dirt bike?
No.
That's gonna be a no on the dirt bike. So I got a little Z50 that's a 4-speed, that's a centrifugal clutch, automatic kind of feeling, so you can, you don't have to pull a clutch lever in manually. And then we got this one, so hopefully between the two, she can get pretty comfortable by the end of the summer, and we can go on some trail rides and stuff. Before I get started, I'm gonna go ahead and start it up and show you guys the problem that it's got. It's very common with these things when the bowls get dirty and the jets get clogged up, that when you go to rev them, they like rev for a second and then fall on their face. And it's almost like when you start a bike that is set up properly when it's cold, a carbureted bike, when you cold start a carbureted bike and you go to rev it right away, it kind of falls on its face with the choke on. And then when you take it off, it's even worse. And it's doing that right now. So I'm gonna investigate it, let it heat up, and see if it gets any better, because when I bought it, it didn't run right at all, and I just kind of took it. I only paid $220 for this thing, so I came out pretty ahead. We're gonna pull the bowl off and see if we can get it fixed. So let me show you how it sounds when it runs.
So it's got a Mikuni style carb on it. It's obviously fake, most of them are, but they say Mikuni like all over them, so it's a good Chinese replica. I've used a few of them before on other Chinese bikes, and they work pretty good. This one doesn't even have an air filter, so I'm assuming it's definitely got some stuff clogged up inside it, and hopefully I'm able to clean it out. So it's cold for sure, and I got the choke partially on. You can hear a little bit of an exhaust leak too. But as soon as I go to rev it, you can hear it fall on its face. If you give it part throttle, it'll rev up a little bit. So it does run, but not great. So we're gonna pull the bowl off and see if I can figure it out. So there's a couple different ways to take these carburetors off depending on which bike you have. Sometimes they have a pivoting thing right here where you can just loosen like a pinch bolt and pull it off. Other times you've got just a flathead, so it's like how the filter goes on this side, but on the other side too. So you just loosen it and pull it out. This one's got a combination of 8 and 10 millimeter bolts that go through the intake manifold. Then there's a gasket with a rubber seal inside it, and then the aluminum side of the carburetor, you can see it's a different color. So you've got your cast aluminum here, the black gasket in the middle, and the raw aluminum on this side. So if you take this side off and this side off, the carb will just come down. And then you've got a fuel line that's feeding the top of the carb. You've got a couple drain lines, at least one on the bottom of the bowl. And then there's the throttle that goes in the top. So all that stuff has to come off before you can pull the carb away from the bike. As far as the tools you're gonna need to do this, 8 millimeter on an open end or a ratcheting socket. 10 millimeter, same deal, open end or ratcheting socket. A pair of needle nose pliers, and then various screwdrivers. I got a flathead, long, a stubby, and a Phillips, and I might end up needing a stubby Phillips as well. If I do, I'll just grab it. Then I got some brake cleaner or carb cleaner if you've got that, some paper towels, and a place that you can work where if you spill fuel all over the ground, it's not gonna do any damage. So if you got a brand new floor you just had done, don't do it. If you're on carpet, probably don't do it. It's gonna smell like gas for a while. Aside from that, just pull it apart. What I like to do before I do anything else is I take a pair of needle nose vice grips. You can use regular vice grips too. These are just a little bit narrower so I can fit them in here. And I just pinch the fuel feed line. This line is gravity fed, and you can turn the gas off, This one was actually off when I started it, so that's cool. But regardless, you can see how it goes down and up and the fuel backs up like this and then feeds the carb. This one's kind of crazy how low it sits. I'm surprised it actually works. And this line is like super brittle, so when I pinch it, it might actually break and crack. But this stuff is really cheap, so if I need to change it out, I'll just get a new one. But I take them and I just go on the tip of this like that, squeeze till it pinches. Don't go crazy because you don't want to kill the line. And then just pop it off the top of the carburetor. And that way you only lose a little bit of fuel and it makes a minimal mess. We don't really care about the gas coming out of it as far as cost, but it just sucks to get a brand new working area and have it covered in gasoline from the get-go. After you got that off, you can loosen the top of the carb. I like to do this first, if I can. Sometimes, depending on the bike, the frame will be in the way and you're not able to do it. And this one is like super, super tight. So if it just unthreads, it's just a standard like clockwise inward thread, counterclockwise to take it out. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey kind of deal. So you just reach up here and normally turn it. And I'll show it to you more when I get the carb off. I'm gonna wait and take it off because it's so tight. That way I can get some vice grips on it and have a wider range of motion. So the next step is just to pull the carb off right here. So I'm gonna take my open end on the back side here. It's a 10 mil. And the choke is kind of in the way on this one, so it's a little bit frustrating, but thankfully there's only 2 bolts, so it's really not gonna take you that long.
This life has gotten so deep, it seems. It all started with a walk down the street, and down the street was a dream. I was determined.
Once you get one side off, just move the other side, and the carb is actually just gonna fall off.
See little Tommy dreams and roller stays up to chase it. My complex urges all merged, this life is basic. Growing up without it all, I should've known.
So when you go to pull the carburetor off, after you got both nuts and bolts taken off or loose, you just pull the gasket off, and be careful with this gasket because it's all plastic, but it has a rubber center section. You can see this one's actually cracked off. This could be why it's running so bad. It's complete here, but it's missing this portion. So it might still be sealing, but if it's getting air in right there, it's gonna run a lot worse. So we might try to put some gasket RTV on this just to see if that's the problem. I think I'm gonna have to end up ordering a new carburetor regardless. And these things are super cheap, like under 20 bucks with a filter, with the manifold, all of it. You just bolt it on and go, and you don't even need to think about how to repair this carburetor at that point. But since I don't have one right now, we're just gonna see if this thing needs to be cleaned out. What I was talking about here is the way this threads on. So you just grab this and turn it, and once it's out, it's a little bit easier to do. So maybe that should be step 1. But just spin this out, and then the carburetor has what's called a slide in it the throttle cable attaches to. This is a very basic carburetor in comparison to like, you know, what you're gonna see on a vehicle, or a car rather. But it pulls out like this, and it's got a needle in the bottom. So this is called your needle, and the needle sits in a seat, and you have this carb slide. So this can only go in one way, but it feels like it can go in 2. So when you go to put it back in, it doesn't go there, and if I rotate it, it'll drop into place and go all the way down, and you can do that till it bottoms out, and then tighten the cap. Now if I was to flip it 180, it'll feel like it goes in, but it won't go all the way down. See how it stopped a lot earlier? And so there's actually way too much tension, and when you look through here, so when you look through there, when this isn't all the way bottomed out, it doesn't take up that entire opening. Because this needs to be completely at the bottom to be working properly. And you'll feel a ton of tension on the throttle cable spring, this right here. And what this spring does is this is what gives you that feeling of snapping the throttle and having it return without you having to push forward, which is great because you want this throttle to default to being off, right? That way if you lose control of the bike, you don't, you know, ride off into oblivion. So we've got this out. This might need some attention. This positioning on this needle can be adjusted, but we're gonna look at that last. And I'm gonna take this carburetor and see where I was talking. It says Mikuni, Japan. This is all fake. None of this is real. They mass produce these things. They don't care. In China, they can make whatever they want. There's no copyright laws. Everyone that's watching this probably already knows that. But we've got 4 Phillips head screws. You can see I'm dumping some fuel out. It's all over myself. It's pretty cool. But we're gonna take these 4 screws out, and then the inside of it's probably gonna be gummed up. So you have a float that sits in here, and the float sits on like a pivot point with a little needle that pushes up. So the fuel's coming in, and when the fuel gets to a certain point, the float floats, hence the name, all the way to the top, and it shuts that port off, so fuel will stop coming in. Otherwise, the fuel will just keep coming in and in and in until it overflows and comes out this tube. And that's why you see some bikes when they're sitting there idling, they're just dripping fuel. A lot of times it's because they've been sitting for a while and the float has gotten gummed up or it's not working for some other reason. Typically, all the fuel that we are running in the US at least has a lot of ethanol in it, like up to 10%, not a lot, but it's enough to where when it sits for a while it gets kind of gummy and it will actually clog all these jets up fuel lines, fuel injectors. A lot of stuff can be affected by ethanol if you don't treat your fuel system often, or if you're not constantly running fuel through it. So you'll see a lot of guys with like the small engines and the lawnmowers, the weed whackers and stuff like that, going and paying more per gallon for ethanol-free gas, where it's 100% ethanol-free, and they have all these claims. It's like $1 more per gallon over like your base octane, like 85 or 87, depending on where you're at. But that's why they do it. So I'm going to take this bowl off and inspect the inside. Another reason that it could be running the way it was is that this right here, this is your fuel screw. So when you turn this all the way in and then turn it out, it changes like how much fuel is going in. And people call it an air fuel screw. You're not changing airflow, you're just changing fuel. The baseline for this generally is all the way in clockwise and then out 1.5 turns, and then you can turn it more or less depending on what you need. Now the problem with this carburetor is that it's on the bottom of the bowl facing up. So when it's installed, it's like this over top of the hot engine, and it's right here. So it's not the hardest one to get to, but it's not easy either. So something like this screwdriver, there's no way you're gonna be able to use this to adjust it. And then you get to a point where you're like constantly loosening it, turning it, putting it back, remounting it, tightening it, and it's just a nightmare. So we're gonna check that and make sure it's at 1.5 turns after we pull the bowl off and see how messy it is inside.
Even when you famous, you still just all alone. Traveling fast to a place you never seen. Boy, the fame is right below, just close your eyes and walk the beam. I used to look around the room to search for why. Now I float up to the sky and come for clouds as they cry. Hey, who would've thought?
So it doesn't look too bad in here, not at first glance. Here's the float I was talking about. So when it's installed, it sits like this. It's just like a little buoy. And as it fills up with fuel, it climbs inside there until it pushes this little pin in, which stops fuel flow. Now we don't have a problem with that right now, but what I think the issue is, and what I hope it is that somewhere in these jets, so you have your main jet right here and your pilot jet. Your pilot jet controls a different portion of your throttle than the main jet. It's idling, and then like off idle throttle, it switches over to your main jet. So you could have a perfectly sized pilot and a poorly sized main, or vice versa, or both, or they're both just dirty. It's very unlikely that somebody rejetted this bike. This thing's, you know, it doesn't scream quality, so I doubt someone spent a whole bunch of time on it. So we're just gonna take these out, and this is a 2-part jet. This main jet here, this bottom comes out, and then this comes out with like a 10 or an 8 or 10 millimeter. You can only go back in one way. Now see how I loosened it and both sides are spinning? I wanna make sure I get the top out so I can clean it, because when you're cleaning these things, you wanna be able to look all the way through it and see light out the other end. So I'm gonna hold it with the open end. Of course it's an 8, which I don't have. I'm gonna grab an 8 open end, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna hold it, and then I'm gonna loosen this top one. So I got an open end 8, I'm gonna hold this main jet right there in the center. I'm gonna pull the top of it off. I gotta take a flathead, and make sure you use a pretty good fitting flathead, like nice and wide on the head here. I don't know what number this is. 1/4 inch by 1, I don't know, it's too hard to read. It's pretty worn out, but just make sure, because these things are brass and they strip like super easy. So I'm gonna hold this bottom part with the 8, and I'm gonna take the top, just try to break it loose. Normally it's pretty easy, yeah. No real difficulty doing it. Which is cool. So make sure you set these things down where you can remember where they go. There's only one way to put them back in this particular carburetor. I see some gunk already, which is kind of a good sign. I'm hoping they're like super nasty, so I know I fixed the problem pretty quick. Just gonna disassemble everything, and then we'll clean it afterwards.
Thought I built a sound to get rich, and when I finally meet.
Now when you take the float out, there's a pin that slides through here, and there's nothing that retains this pin when the base or the bottom of the carb is on. So when you have this bolt on here, the pin is locked in, just constricted by dimension. When that's gone, this pin can fall out, so you gotta make sure you don't tip it too hard one way or the other. Sometimes they fit tighter than others as well, but I'll try to pop the pin out so you can see what I'm talking about. A pick tool will get it. Just don't feel like getting up. There we go. So it'll just slide out right here. When I pull that out, the entire float will lift up and it will pull the little needle thing with it. So this is what goes down inside there to restrict fuel flow from coming into the bowl itself. So I'm taking this out so I can loosen that up and clean the inside of that.
It's karma, do you think she'll go and switch? But life never really pans the way you plan. And depending how you land, it takes a man to understand. Hey, we all.
It's a little tiny Phillips head retaining screw. It could be a flathead in whatever carburetor you're working on if you're doing the same thing. But once you pull that out, you should be able to wiggle out the base of the fuel inlet. sometimes they're a little bit difficult to get out. And it's because they have an O-ring on them like that. There's gonna feel a little resistance when you pull on it, it's normal. Another good reason to disassemble the entire carburetor, even if you're just gonna clean the jets, is that if you wanna spray any of this with brake cleaner or carburetor cleaner, which I typically do, you have to be careful because if you get any of it on the O-rings, they can dry out and expand because the brake cleaner and carb cleaner sucks all the moisture out of this stuff, and then they won't fit anymore at all. They'll be like drastically larger or smaller. I've had them get bigger. I guess in theory they should shrink, but regardless, they don't fit worth a shit after you do that. So you got to be careful to not overspray onto all the rubber gaskets. And then for the fuel screw, I can't really get it out with such a wide flathead, so I'm gonna get a tighter, smaller flathead. Something like this, long and skinny. Doesn't have to be this tall, of course. Goes right in there. Now, before you take it out, just for reference, if you got like a random bike that's not running right, or even if it was running well, if it's running well, you want to make sure you can put this back to where it was as far as how many turns in and out it was. And if it's running poorly, you want to record that too, so that you know that if you put it at that spot, it's likely going to run bad again. So I'm going to run it all the way in clockwise and see how many turns it takes. 3 full turns. There we go. That's all the way in. So I know that it was 2.5 to 3 turns out, and it did not run well. Well, I completely just ruined this fuel screw. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's destroyed. And I didn't push that hard. I ran it all the way in. When I went to run it out, it got stuck. We're gonna move on to the jets because that's the only option we really have. And you always want to be able to see daylight through the other side of the jet. So you'll notice there's a big hole in the center, and then you've got holes on the sides here. You want to be able to see through all of those. So I hold them up to like the window in here where there's a lot of light coming through, and I just check to make sure it's flowing properly. I'm still going to spray it out with brake cleaner, but I am going to use the little tip that comes with it. What I like to do is I put it straight up to the hole and then pull the trigger and make sure it shoots out the other side. Be careful with your eyes on this one too. This brake cleaner will destroy them. And I do the same thing with the carb. Now, even though I just sprayed this thing out, I still can't see all the way through the center of it. So I'm thinking maybe it's gummed up in the middle. So what I'm gonna do is I got some welding brushes. I wanna cut a little piece of the stainless wire off the brush. I'm gonna shove it inside there, the little bristle, and try to clean out whatever is restricting it from coming out the other side. This might be our problem with why it's idling so poorly. So I cut off a little piece of wire like this, and I can just shove it in and out of the jet and try to clear up anything that might be stuck. This doesn't always work. There we go. Now I can finally see some light. So I'm gonna spray brake cleaner in it one more time. Okay, so with it, whatever's in there, I think we got it out. I'm gonna put the car back together. I'm pretty bummed about the fuel screw because if that was the problem and I just tried to adjust the fuel screw pretty much for a how-to more so than needing to do it, I kind of screwed myself. But it is what it is. We're gonna get back together and see if we made any progress. I remember I had this problem with this gasket too being broken, and it might not be sealing. So the carb has the O-ring on one side, and then you've got this flat piece. So you don't need a double O-ring on one side. So that goes like that, and the other O-ring faces the manifold. So all of this in theory could be leaking. It's all stuff to think about when I get it together if it doesn't run properly, which is probably not going to. But realistically, I think I need to order a new carb. Everything's pretty old on it. I'll grab a spark plug, see if I got one. We'll throw that in, and we'll start it. I don't know what plug is in this bike, but it's probably a C7 HSA NGK, and I happen to have one luckily from some other bike. So I'm gonna pull out this one and look at it and see, and we'll just throw the new one in. Look how nasty this plug is. All black, probably running super rich. Jet was probably stuck open, and it is a C7 HSA, which is cool. I think most of these motors run the exact same plug. I think it's gonna run a lot better now, despite the fuel screw being potentially in the wrong spot. With this new plug and a freshly cleaned out carb, this plug was a pretty good indication that it was not running right, but I don't know if we fixed it yet. So let's kick it and see if it starts up a little smoother. So I stole a filter from one of my other bikes, and I'm gonna throw it on first real quick. I know this one will fit because it's actually the same carb. Oh, fuck. Jesus. So I don't even know if there's fuel in this thing. It's probably really old. But I'm not gonna drain it, I'm just gonna run it and see if it works. So I got my choke on, I got my fuel on, and I got an air filter on it with a freshly cleaned carb and a new plug. So the exhaust is leaking really bad, and you can't turn the idle down with the flathead, which I knew, but I was just trying to make it work. So I got a Phillips now. I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit so it's not so crazy when it first starts up. And then the exhaust manifold, or whatever, there's one manifold, it's a little single runner. They're loose, so I'm gonna try to tighten these. All right, so I got the header a little tighter. I turned the idle down. Let's start it again and see if it sounds any better. These little motors have a lot of compression. So it sounds insane. The idle is super high. No matter what I do with the fuel or the idle screw, nothing really changes. It's dripping some fuel out on the kick plate or skid plate, and yeah, just overall, it sounds like it's got a vacuum leak. That's what I think it is. Air's getting to it from somewhere else. I'm gonna try to go ride it around and just not die. It's way too high of an RPM, so if you let the clutch out, it's gonna be like cruising along pretty good. But we'll just investigate it. Probably gonna go ahead and order a new carb. Okay, final consensus. It runs really bad. I don't think I really fixed anything, honestly. It idles a lot higher and more consistent than it did before I cleaned the carb and the jets out, but it's not any better. It's actually super dangerous. I had to keep my finger on the kill switch and just pull the clutch in and then kill it every time because it's only got the front brake, so I can't stall it with the rear pedal. The throttle doesn't really do anything. I pull the idle screw all the way out and it doesn't drop enough to be safe. It's just idling like crazy high, and it gets progressively higher at the longer that it runs. And if I get it throttle, it's a little bit more responsive than it was before, but it's at the trade-off of the fact that it's like super dangerous now. So I'm gonna go ahead and just order the other carb, and I will give you more results. See all the fuel that's, I don't know if you can see, it's leaked a handful of fuel on the ground. So the float that I was explaining, what I thought to explain really well, isn't working even though everything is cleaned out. It's either not going up all the way, so it's still letting fuel come in, or something is stopping it, and so it's dripping fuel out regardless of the float operating the way it should. I'm not sure what it is. It's really not worth investigating. Like I said, I just wish I could ride it today. I wanted to kind of get something done, make some progress. But we'll order the other carb, I'll throw it on, and we should be good to go. We should be fine. Otherwise, these top ends are like 25 bucks. I don't have a problem making a video for that. That'd be cool. Give me a reason to do it. It's honestly more motivating when you can film it, because then you have some use for the video. You feel like you're not just wasting time. As always, I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. Peace out.